I know you're out there. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
The KrisAnne Hall Show.
Any varmint that crosses that lady's path has met its match.
Rise and shine, liberty-loving patriots. Welcome to the KrisAnne Hall Show. KrisAnne Hall here, as always, 6 days a week. Monday through Friday right here, and Sunday on the Genesis Communications Network. KrisAnnehall.com. Liberty over security, principle over party, and truth over your favorite personality. And that is viewed by our government as an extremist ideology. It has gotten me on the list, the Southern Poverty Law Center list, for anti-government extremist groups. I am, just little old me, an anti-government extremist group. How's that for you? Now, many of you know that I was a Russian linguist in the military. And part of our training was not just simply becoming proficient in reading, writing, or speaking Russian, but also understanding the Russian culture and Russian history. That was my favorite part of the whole training, by the way. Maybe I'm an I'm an anthropologist at heart, and I just love studying cultures and histories. That's probably why I fell in love with our own history, the greatest history, fighting for liberty, creating the greatest human rights statements, our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, and our Bill of Rights, a government dedicated to the preservation of liberty. But I want to tell you, not only knowing history, but knowing how history moves throughout other cultures, not just our own, but other cultures and other times, proves the reliability as history as a tool. The reliability of history as a tool, I should say. And these things just simply confirm and reconfirm over and over again that human nature never changes and people operate in the same ways, no matter where they grew up, no matter the language they speak and how they operate. It's just simply human nature. And you know, the history that I teach shows us the mistakes that we're making today. 700 years of history that created our liberty, just let me say, ideology. We have to say that because this is about our lesson today. Extremist ideologies, okay? So our liberty ideology that developed over hundreds of years, that compelled our framers to seek independence from a king and a kingdom, so that we would no longer be subjects of a king, but free men in a republic, where all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed, to secure the rights that have been given to us by God. Not to establish rights by government documents, not to obtain rights from government entities, but to secure the rights that are ours by the nature of our creation. And so this understanding This teaching has put me on a number of lists. Again, one of them is the Southern Poverty Law Center list of anti-government extremists. I mean, think about that for a moment. I am a pro-constitutional advocate. I am not an anarchist by any means. My husband tells me that all the time. You are not an anarchist. I know that. I am not an anarchist because I believe that if men were angels, we wouldn't need government, but we are not angels. We are depraved by our depraved by our human nature. And because evil men do wicked things, and evil men like to get together with other evil men to do wicked things, good people need to organize together to secure their rights. Because guess what? If it's just you, and China wants to take over the world, what are you going to do? You better learn to speak Chinese, or you at least had better know how to get along and go along. But to secure our rights, we created government to be a reflection of the people's principles, a reflection of their desire to secure their liberty, so that if China wants to take over the world, they can't take over us. Because it's not just us. It's not just us and our neighbors. We have built a structure called a constitutional republic that is a community built upon communities that all work together for a common goal: to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. See, that's the whole point here. We have come together to secure the blessings of liberty. And I want to talk to you today about a little lesson that I learned from Russian history, and put that in the light of what our government is doing today. You know, I'm seeing this trend in my radio shows those last few days, and I think it's because this research that I'm doing is leading me down a path and showing me some new things that I haven't been aware of. And yesterday, somebody sent me a link to, I suppose in response to my radio show yesterday, to a website that the FBI has designed for our children and for, parents and teachers and that sort of thing. The website is called Don't Be a Puppet. And the purpose of this website, Don't Be a Puppet, they say, is to pull back the curtain on violent extremism. We've been talking about the government's definition of violent extremism for the last few days. And it's amazing how this website geared for our children, the propaganda put forward, slips periodically from the goal of violence to simply ideologies and beliefs. Now, of course, this website does its very best to make sure that we understand that we have rights in America. There's a lovely little video by the director of the FBI, Jim Comey, where he is very, very adamant that we have liberty in America. We have freedoms in America that allow us to speak and believe however we want. We're only concerned about these people who will use violence in order to maintain or to spread their beliefs or their ideologies. But the message is clear here. Very, very clear. You have to be careful about what you believe. It even says that we must encourage our children to think critically about messages and goals of extremism. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't think critically, okay? I'm always in favor of thinking critically, which is why I want us to use this website by thinking critically. And the whole purpose is to keep teenagers from becoming puppets of violent extremists, they say, who simply want to carry out their destructive mission, which often includes targeting or killing innocent people. Okay, so this is, on the surface, it is very, very good. We do not want anybody to be violent, okay? We do not want the killing of innocent people. I totally and completely and totally endorse that. But you have to look at how this works. It's a very, very well put together website. It is a very attractive website. It's got little games and little missions, and it's a very, I find it quite ironic because the FBI says that they're trying to expose the seductive nature of violent extremist propaganda. And that's exactly what this website is. A very attractive bit of propaganda. And what we have now is this website for our children. It teaches parents and teachers how to facilitate this teaching. If you are a parent or a teacher, then you should be doing this training with your children. And it gives you the warning signs of violent extremism, what we should be doing. We have a discussion for leaders and teachers, trusted adults. We have a section for parents. In the section for the parents and the teachers, it says the FBI will use the certificate link because, you see, you get a certificate after completion. And it says, we'll use the certificate link as a metric collection tool to count how many people successfully complete the program. But we won't track and store your information.
KrisAnne Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist.
So when you make it through the program, you get a certificate of completion. You can put your name in it. You sign it as a pledge. And the FBI says, oh, we're going to use this as a metric collection tool to count how many people successfully keep the program. But don't worry. We're not going to be tracking or storing any user information when collecting this data. So we're supposed to believe that the FBI, who have just the other day created new secret rules on data collection using their secret courts, that they won't collect any data from people who visit this site. They're just going to count numbers. Yeah. Okay. I don't care. I'm on the list anyway. I'm going through the website. Now, it has a whole important information about how the FBI suggests that you talk about this subject in more depth before you begin the program, recommends that you are available to discuss the materials while the teens are using the site after they have completed the program. And you can also consider incorporating this site into safety briefings and anti-bullying programs. It is important that you emphasize the examples of violent extremism present in the program. and it is important that you don't confuse these with mainstream. Okay? Don't confuse these extremist beliefs with any mainstream religious, ethnic, or political group. Mainstream, right? What is acceptable by society? So, on the contrary, if it's not mainstream, then of course you can talk about it because it will fall into this extremist ideology. Now remember, extremist ideology is defined by our government, by their publications. Okay, so this is extremist ideology from 2011, the Department of Homeland Security. Right-wing extremism in the United States can be broadly divided into those groups, movements, and adherents that are primarily hate-oriented, based on hatred of particular religions, racial, or ethnic groups, and those that are mainly anti-government, rejecting federal authority in favor of state or local authority, or rejecting government authority entirely. It may include groups and individuals that are dedicated to a single issue, such as opposition to abortion or immigration. So these are extremist groups that we need to be aware of, and we need to teach our children to be concerned about. In 2013, the Department of Defense, training their people in the Air Force, decided that extremist ideologies were apparent in U.S. history, and that there are many examples of extremist ideologies and movements within our history. This document says, the colonists who sought to free themselves from British rule are an example of extremist ideologies and movements. So, as you're discussing this with these teens, you must remember the government's definition of extremist ideologies. George Washington, Samuel Adams, Thomas Jefferson, the Sons of Liberty. Our women of the American Revolution, Mercy Otis Warren, Penelope Barker, Abigail Adams. These people were members of an extremist ideology group, and now we can consider them to be violent extremists because, that's what they did. They stood for liberty, and they believed that it was worth fighting for, and they would not become slaves to government. Now, according to 18 U.S. Code 233, you are a domestic terrorist if you appear to intend to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, if you appear to intend to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion. You see how we're slipping here out of acts of violence to the appearance of association with these groups.
The KrisAnne Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist.
So in spite of their words, their actions tell us something different. You will know them by their fruits. Judge their actions by their words. Comey says, you are free to believe. We want to be acceptable of all beliefs. We should embrace all beliefs. We should be bringing all beliefs into the diversity of our societies, and only be suspicious of them when they appear to be violent. Okay? So appearing to intend intimidation, coercion, influencing the policy of government by intimidation or coercion, which, by the way, is the definition. What is the definition of intimidation or coercion? Because this list at 18 U.S.C. Code 2331 says that we are to be suspicious of people who appear to intend intimidation or coercion, appear to intend to influence policy of a government by intimidation, coercion, or appear to intend to affect the conduct of government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping. There's an or there, which means that the coercion and the intimidation is the sign in the eyes of our government as a violent act. But what is intimidation or coercion when the government is doing the definitions? So let's get back to our website for our children. This Don't Be a Puppet website. And when you go inside, there is a really brilliant interactive site. What is violent extremism? Who are the violent extremists? What is it that we need to be worried about? When to report violent extremism? When do you report violent extremism? When people are spending a lot of time reading about violent extremists online, chat rooms, or engaging in password-protected websites. That encryption on your phone means that you might be, intending to be a violent extremist. So why would you stand with Apple and support these encryptions if they might just be associating you with the ideologies of extremists? Researching or training with weapons or explosives. Don't go to that gun range, because if you go to that gun range, then you could be associating yourself with violent extremists. When you go into this website, it teaches you about the principles of violent extremist groupthink. It shows you the symbols of these violent extremist groups. It shows you how these violent extremists distort these principles, and how they blame people, and how they create propaganda. And we need to know who are the violent extremist groups today as well. So your violent extremist groups are created into two groups: the international violent extremist groups and the domestic extremist ideologies. Okay, so now we're not talking about groups again. We're talking about ideologies. Watch this slipping now. And so here are your violent extremist ideologies: the sovereign citizens, the abortion extremists, the environmental rights and animal rights extremists, militia extremists, anarchist extremists, and white supremacy extremists. I find this very interesting that we have this use of this word militia. And so we are now, if you are in militia, you are an extremist in your ideology. They even give you a list of known violent extremist groups in America throughout history. I find it quite ironic that it never mentions the Weather Underground. Bill Ayers' group. And we have the Weather Underground, who facilitated violent acts, multiple violent acts in our history. The Haymarket Police Memorial Building bombing in October 6, 1969. Something in history called the Days of Rage that occurred in our history as a result of these attacks by the Weather Underground. October 8, 1969. The Flint War Council was a series of meetings of the Weather Underground associated with Flint, Michigan that took place from December 27th to December 31st, 1969. Decisions were made to blow up people and to engage in guerrilla warfare against the United States. The New York City arson attacks, February 21st, 1970. The Greenwich Village townhouse explosion, March 6, 1970. Okay, so we have these violent attacks by a single group called the Weather Underground, and there is no mention by the FBI of this terrorist group who killed people in America. Why wouldn't they want to mention them? Well, because Bill Ayers never went to prison. Bill Ayers never got in trouble. And Bill Ayers right now is an advisor to the President of the United States. So, shh, don't mention that group. You can mention the people that are gathering as militias. You can mention the people that want to go and get gun training. You want to mention the people who believe in the foundation of America, that believe that the states are superior to the federal government. You can mention those people, but don't mention the Weather Underground. So let me tell you what I see when I see this website, because you go through this website, right? You find out all these beautiful things about violent extremism, and you learn all how to identify violent extremists and how to notify the FBI and your parents and your teachers. Well, don't notify your parents if they're actually the ones that are, the violent extremists. But it gives you a direct line on how to notify your local FBI agency if you see someone acting in a potentially extremist manner, something that makes you concerned. If you see something, say something. You know what I see when I look at that website? I see Pavlik Morozov. That's what I see. Pavlik Morozov. You see, Pavlik Morozov was a hero to the Russian children. They were taught songs and poems about Pavlik Morozov all throughout communist Russia. For over half a century, the whole country loved this teenage boy for his bravery and patriotism to the country. Well, because it was mainstream patriotism. You'll learn from the FBI that these militia groups, these violent extremist malicious groups, they consider themselves patriots. They call themselves patriots. And they're trying to hold up the ideologies of America. Okay? But this isn't the same kind of patriotism. So here's the story of Pavlik Morozov. In 1932, Pavlik Morozov exposed his father as an enemy of the people. He informed the OGPU, which is what the KGB was called back then, that his father was helping the kulak, a successful peasant they were successful peasants who refused to relinquish their land and livestock to the state as required by the collectivism plan. So, see, remember I've been telling you that the socialism and the socialist revolution in Russia began with the seizing of the land and the livestock from the farmers and the ranchers. And so what Pavlik did was turned in his father for helping these people who wanted to secure the land and the livestock for their private ownership against the government's requirement that it become public land for public use. And his father was branded an enemy of socialism. Pavlik's father, because he turned him in as an enemy of the state, was arrested, tried, and sent to a concentration camp, never to be seen again. Soon after his father's trial, Pavlik was murdered by, quote, enemies of the state. After his death, Pavlik was hailed as a hero of the people, and every child in the Soviet Union was required to learn his story and prepare to follow his example. If you see something, say something. They wrote songs about the way Pavlik turned in his father for refusing to relinquish his land.
The weapon of my choice, don't censor my voice. Hate me if you won't, or love me if you can. If the truth is what you want, then you found your man. I ain't backing down, I ain't backing up. If you think like I think, then crank it on up. I won't back up, I don't back down. I've been raised up to stand my ground. Take my job, but not my guns. Tax my check till I ain't got none, except for the good Lord up above. I answer to no one.
The KrisAnne Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist.
A song about a hero pioneer. In the Urals there are forests, centuries-old beauty, richly green the whole year. Above the top of the crag eagles glide, over the eagles an airplane flies. Under the mountain there is a kolkhoz. Our comrade grew up there. Call him Pavel Morozov. Our comrade is a hero. He did not allow his father to steal the property of the people. They used this lesson of Pavel to recruit young people into a see something, say something group called the Pioneers. We hear about the Hitler's brown shirts, but this was the Russian version. Pavel, who had turned in his father for refusing to turn over his land so it could be property of the people. Notice the language. He did not allow his father to steal the property of the people. Pavel was a hero in the Russian government. Some say he never even really existed. He was just a creation so that they could create a pioneer group to bring children in at a younger age to the propaganda of socialism. And what is the first mechanism of socialism? Public land for public use. That all land is the property of the people. And anybody who tries to keep the land from public use, who wants to hold to the private ownership of their land, is selfish, is an enemy of the state, and even their children should turn them in. How does that equate to the foundation of America? The fundamental beliefs that built the liberty, the fundamental ideologies that built our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our Declaration of Independence. This new definition, this old definition brought forward in a new way of the enemies of the state, those anti-government or extremists who want to hold on to their ranches, their farmland, that believe in the natural laws established by God. As Samuel Adams wrote, that among the natural rights of the colonists are these: first, life; secondly, liberty; third, property, together with the right to protect them in the best means possible. That preservation of the property ownership of the people is one of the primary duties of the states. As the states are created to preserve the rights of the people, to secure the rights of the people, and an inherent right of the people is their ability to secure their property. How do we measure that up to the FBI's definition today? To the federal government's definition, to the Department of Homeland Security's definition, to the Department of Defense's definition? Do we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights? That among these, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, property, the ability to secure them, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power of the consent of the governed? Or do we follow the Soviet model and create a Pavel who will turn in his father for securing his ranch, so that we can create a group of young pioneers who will see something and say something? Do we uphold Soviet principles or the foundation of liberty in America? God bless. See you tomorrow.